Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman for No Spin Rodeo. No politics, no BS, just hard-hitting news and rodeo commentary from two of the most trusted sources in our sport. Kendra Santos, Tommy Joe Lucia. Listen up. Here we go.
Well, hello, No Spinners. Welcome to episode number 32. Can't believe we're into 32 of these. No Spin Rodeo. I'm Tommy Joe Lucia, and joining me are Greg Teagarden and the First Lady of Pro Rodeo Journalism, Kendra Santos, the social media queen that we all wish we had that kind of numbers, all those kind of good things. Anyway, welcome everybody to No Spin Rodeo. Here where you hear what you don't hear everywhere else, you hear it right here, and gives you a little something to talk at the water cooler about that you can count on. So we always kind of kick it off with kind of finding out what's going on in everybody's lives a little bit with coffee time. Miss Santos, I hear you've got your camera propped up on a drink or two and you're ready to go. Is that right?
Well, to get into the right altitude, it is actually on a 30 pack of Coors Light. I don't like beer. I've never liked beer. That is what my phone is sitting on. But I will say this, the weather in our country right now is insane. And like in California, it's been over 100 degrees. My spring roses are in full bloom. The daffodil bulbs just came up. It's very confused. And my heart, I think our whole country's heart is with these people. You don't need to see very many images of what happened with Hurricane Helene in North Carolina to just, the devastation is beyond what is really hard to comprehend. And now people in Florida bracing up for Hurricane Milton, which I've heard all sorts of things. Category 5 might come down to a 4 or 3. I don't know where that's at. I haven't had the TV on today, but just, beyond rodeo, thinking about, humanity and people and families and wishing for the best for those poor people.
Greg? It's warm in California. What is it in your new place?
Well, we just started getting a little, I don't even want to say chilly, but fall-like. It's in the 70s this week. It's been beautiful, no rain. So definitely feeling for those people that out west that got flooded out. I've seen some crazy images coming back from the hurricane. So it's, these weather events are getting crazy. And we're praying for those people down in Arcadia who have a rodeo next weekend, which I don't know if that's going to happen with this storm blowing through.
Yeah, I was going to ask you after the no spin. I was going to say, when we got on our Piranha call, do we know if that is that right in the path of destruction?
It's just south of the path, which is the bad side of the storm. So, and we've reached out to them, and they're hoping that Friday they'll have good news, and we'll have a rodeo next week. So,
that's what I think most of those people that live in that go through. While we're talking about that, well, for me personally, I've been in Utah. The fall colors in Utah are stunning. Donna and I make trips out about every other night on the side-by-side to go look at how the trees are changing because we're in awe of the colors. Texas, we came back to Texas, and it's down to 90, which when it's 110, it gets down to 70 in the evening, and you're almost like you need to get a hoodie. So it's cooled off in Texas. But I will say on the North Carolina, I did want to bring this up in coffee time. Those people you guys just touched on it. I want to do a shout out. A friend of mine named Fred, he owns Gala Catering. He's sending his catering trucks to North Carolina to cook, to send food to a lot of these people. So shout out to Fred. And another thing that I saw, and I even gave him a call, one of the guys in our rodeo community, Matt Merritt, very good entertainer. He lives about 40 miles from kind of one of the most devastated areas there. And he and his family, they've got some friends, and they're in the rodeo family, the Toberers. They have youth rodeo people. Well, they have Mountain Mule Packers Ranch in North Carolina, and they have these mules, pack mules, and what they typically do is they take veterans up in the mountains as a part of therapy, right? Well, they've converted all of their pack mules over. And so they're now meeting in Walmart there right down the road from Matt Merritt's place, loading up their trailers with supplies, going up, strapping them on the pack mules, and packing everything into these people that can't be touched. So there was a couple interesting things in my conversation with Matt that I thought would just be interesting here in coffee time. They built a lot of these houses in these mountains. Like if you've been to North Carolina, I remember when we did Raleigh at World's Toughest and stuff, when you're going down the interstate, you don't even know where there's a gas station, right? Because there's trees and it's not like in Texas where you can look down there and say, oh, there's a Love's coming up. You'll pass the exit, right? You better read the road signs or you don't ever know what's off the exit because it's so thick and the elevations and things. Where these people built these houses right up in the mountains, and all this rain came and trees, thousands and thousands and millions of trees fell, and these people are stranded. And literally the only way that they're getting to these people is through these pack mules and four-wheelers and chainsaws. And so the Tobers, Mountain Mule Ranch, I just wanted to mention them because we always wonder, who do you give something to? And another interesting thing, they don't need water bottles, right? Or goldfish, right? Just like you said, Greg, right now they're packing up mini propane canisters and clothes and stuff because it's dropping at night and they have no electricity and no food in a lot of these homes. He mentioned a 93-year-old man that was up there. Tree fell through his house. He'd been up there for a week. They knew he was up there. They finally got to him. 93 years old, by himself, a tree in his roof. It's just leaking in. He's just sitting in his recliner, but he doesn't want to leave, right? So a lot of these people don't want to leave their homes. And so I was going to mention, and this is up to you guys, but at Michelle-Toberer that's the Venmo account for this Mountain Mule Packer Ranch. And I'm not telling you to do anything, but it's kind of nice to know if you do feel and if you do want to give something that you know what this is going to. This is going to buying the supplies they need, putting it on the mules, because these people aren't Red Cross or nothing. They're just pack muling supplies in. And he said it's almost like a mail route. They have like all these houses and they start the mules and they stop here. What do you need today? And they go on to the next house. So I thought that was really cool. It's a part of the rodeo family out there kind of doing their own thing to help those people that, it's intense in those areas where the mountains just flooded, right? Just the mudslides and floods and stuff. So, praying for these people.
For sure. And like a lot of us have seen the image of the horse standing on top of a roof, and there's like 2 feet of the roof of a house or whatever it was sticking up out of the water. And here came people in like a blow up boat, and they figured out a way to rescue this horse. But like, people in your hometown of Weatherford, as just one of many other examples, like they all rallied. They sent like hay and feed and different things. I mean, imagine having animals and you can't, I saw pigs where, they barely have, a nose above the water. It's like, it's sickening.
It's heartbreaking and it's reality. And now Florida's bracing. I mean, it depends on what you're reading, right? For the mega storm of the century. But then you can read stuff that says that that China is putting infrared waves through their satellites that's increasing the strength of the storm. So, we don't know everything, but we do know that out of your own little bubble, there are people hurting. So if you have the opportunity to reach out and help some of these people that are actually on the ground there doing stuff, Donna and I offered to go into North Carolina and help, but the truth is it's really hard to help. We've mentioned this before, right? There, even FEMA and stuff stop these food trucks from these cooking catering trucks from coming in because they're trying to coordinate it. Well, these people are just trying to come in and give people food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's not as simple as I make it sound, right? Coordinating a natural disaster, but let them eat. Anyway, but coffee time was the reality. That's kind of what it's about, a reality of what's going on in the world today. So
yeah, and those people in Florida, this is the second storm in 2 weeks. So that Big Bend from Tampa up has already, been flooded out already. So this is not going to be a good trip for them either.
well, and the waters haven't had a chance to recede, right? Is that correct? The way I understand it is they're already full, and they're going to be more full or something.
Yeah, I've seen like the sand that got pushed up in like Clearwater and all that area in the Big Bend and Cedar Key. They're just digging out now. It's going to get all pushed back up again.
Well, it's beautiful to live there when there's not storms, just like it's beautiful to live in California where you're at, Kendra, until you finally fall into a giant hole when the big one happens. But anyway, staying in the center of the country where I'm at, it has its advantages, even though it's 150 degrees and there's scorpions and copperheads. All right, here we go. Let's hit some rodeo news. Kendra, you kick it off, and I've got a little bit on the tail end of you. What do you got in rodeo news today?
I sadly have a death in our rodeo family. Sorry to make it even worse, but this 19-year-old Kansas cowgirl, Emma Brungart, I hope I'm saying that correct. She died Friday night, October 4th, in a single vehicle accident in Kansas. And my understanding is that there were 6 college kids in a truck. The driver missed a Y in the intersection and hit a row of trees. And Emma died at the scene, and there were a range of injuries with the other kids. But she was Miss Rodeo Teen Kansas this year and went on to Colby Community College on a rodeo scholarship, competed in the barrel racing, breakaway roping, and goat tying. By all accounts, just a great kid. So something that really was a dagger in my mom heart is that Emma's parents, Holly and Mike, they lost Emma's little brother, Joseph, 3 years ago at 14 years old. So prayers for that family. This is the worst lightning strikes twice thing I can imagine. I know another rodeo family in Nevada who's lost 2 kids separately. And I just, I can't even speak of that. So another prayer rally for our rodeo family. 2018 NFR barrel racer Kylie Wiest and her husband Jay. Their little man Marcus, he was in a horse accident last week, and he's no longer intubated. He's awake now, but he suffered a serious head injury, and so obviously we all wish him well and sending prayers to that family also. Because the family ties. Kylie Wiest, that sounded familiar, and I'm like, yeah, I guess it's because she was at the NFR. But I think that this is fun, and it's directly linked to, what we're all about, which is sort of the rest of the story on rodeo. But Kylie, her sister Janae Ward Massey is also an NFR barrel racer, as is their mom Renee Ward, as was their grandma Florence Urey, who's a very, very famous Hall of Fame cowgirl. So if it sounded familiar or not, that is generations of rodeo greatness, right? NFR, 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 NFR. So that's pretty cool. The 50th Canadian Finals Rodeo, it was amazing. That just happened. And it was extra fun for me. A special friend from Nebraska, a special friend to our family, the Wakefields. Riley Wakefield went in with the #1 back number. That was fun. And I thought that the openings were extra. They were really cool. There were some really neat things where they My two personal favorites were like they had Mel Highland, the legendary bronc rider. Like they had Mel Highland getting down on one in the chute, and he sticks his feet up, and he lifts his rein and like he's going to mark him out, and then they cut the lights and 72-year-old trick riding like icon Jerry Deuce, she gets on. Do you know Piper Ewell, the young trick rider? She's in her teens. She's insanely talented. So Jerry Deuce, 72 years old, she actually performs a trick at 72 years old on Piper's horse. It was really, really special. And anyway, I thought those were things that I don't know that anybody's ever seen before, a 72-year-old trick rider. But records fell all over the place at the Canadian finals this year. Cody Lamb in the bareback riding, he won the CFR and the championship. He set a record, 92.5 points on C5's Virgil. Where does it end with that horse, right? Like it's almost like if you don't, who gets him? It seems like sets a record, right? Like if you don't get car killed, you're gonna win the rodeo and likely set a record. It feels like with that horse. But anyway, in the bulldogging, Dalton Massey won. He's the world leader from Oregon. He won his first Canadian title, and he won 2 rounds, and then he had to win. He missed his 4th one, had to come back and win the final round, and did it to win that. Brendan Lay, who's a cousin to bareback rider Clint Lay, who was in hot contention with Cody Lamb for the bareback riding title, won the CFR and was the reserve Canadian champ. And the family ties up there are kind of like down here. They never stop. So I thought that was really cool to see a family, at both ends of the arena. In the breakaway roping, Macy Auclair won both the CFR and Canadian championships. Cool fun fact on her was that she had Cody Ohl on speed dial. And my understanding is she would set up her phone, when she's out roping the dummy, and he would be FaceTiming her and giving her tips or whatever. Anyway, Friday night at the Canadian finals, it was her 22nd birthday, and she broke the CFR and Canadian breakaway roping record with a 1-5. She won 3 of the 5 rounds, and it was a pretty dominating situation. And I just think, for Cody Ohl to be mentoring this young woman, and it's part, physical roping tips, and it's part just he did not believe he could be beat when he was the man. And to see him instilling that sort of something in a young cowgirl, I think that's pretty cool. In the barrel race, Taylor Manning won both the CFR and the Canadian finals. Here's something that I thought was interesting. I made a couple of calls on this. So in Canada, the leader going into the last round gets top of the ground. And in this particular case, Taylor Manning and Archie, made it count, won the round, closed the deal. But at the NFR, that's not the case. And so it used to be at the NFR in the barrel race, 15 down to 1 and drop to, every round. Now, in the first round, the barrel racers have decided that the world leader goes first on opening night at the NFR. And then they drop 2 spots. And so on round 2, they start with number 3. And in the 10th round, it's kind of interesting that it starts with number 4. So in other words, if you're right up there at the top, the people that are going to be 1, 2, 3 going in are going to go last on the last night at the NFR. And, one thing I've noticed a lot here lately is that so many rodeos now, every 5, there's a tractor drag, right? And apparently, at the NFR, it's still just a hand drag after each one. Anyway, I think that's kind of interesting that they do it so differently in the 2 countries. But anyway, let's move along. So in the bronc riding, Zeke Thurston, now a 5-time Canadian champ. Logan Hay won the average. Pretty fun for people like us who've been forever friends with their dads, Skeeter Thurston and Rod Hay. The team roping is one of those mixed decisions where people from two different teams are the champs, and that's always a little bit hard for me. In this case, I guess, for example, Jeremy Bueller won the year in the heeling, and he roped with multiple people this year. But Kavis Drake is the Canadian champ at the heading. Jeremy Bueller in the heeling. Kavis roped with Denham Ross. Jeremy roped at the finals with Trey Galley. Cash Bonnet, another very famous family, and Logan Spady won the CFR average in the team roping. Logan Spady is also the 2024 Canadian all-around champ. Haven Medjid, who last year he set an NFR record at the Thomas and Mack. He just set a 6.8 second record run at the Canadian finals and is the 2024 Canadian calf roping champ. Zeke Thurston's cousin Bo won the CFR. The Canadian bull riding race was a total shakeup. I've never heard of William Barrows. Don't know if you have. Complete twist and surprise ending because William Barrows wasn't even supposed to, he didn't qualify for the CFR, but he got rolled up because past Canadian champ Jared Parsonage got hurt. Anyway, this kid, whoever William Barrows is, rode 4 out of 5 bulls. Nobody else rode more than 2. And he won the CFR average and edge defending Canadian champ Edgar Durazo. Is that how you say it? Durazo. It's I think by just 1,500 for the Canadian title. So the last little thing I'll say, Miss Edmonton was just crowned. Her name's Cody Wilson. She was crowned Miss Rodeo Canada 2025. So we'll be seeing a lot of her this next year. I'll leave it there for now on rodeo news. And I think it's a perfect segue to no spin feedback, which we've been getting a ton of, which we love. And
Well,
I think at least
I've got a handful of news.
Oh, great.
Let me throw some news in before you jump in there. Some things that I thought were interesting.
Perfect.
There were some announcements. Some of you may have found them. I'm kind of on the different side of the ledger than Kendra. I hear all the names, and some of them I know, and some of them I don't. But they announced on the livestock for the NFR the Pendleton Bareback Horse of the Year, Boot Barnes Nightcrawler from Pickett Pro Rodeo. I think that's cool. And Virgil was number 2, interestingly enough, in the Bareback Horse of the Year. And Agent Lynx of Calgary Stampede 3rd. Saddle Bronc Riding Horse of the Year. That's the kind of stuff that I'm most interested in, is this kind of stuff. All or Nothing by Andrews Rodeo. Congratulations, Sammy, on that. Black Tie, Sankey Pro Rodeo. We had this horse. This horse is, I just think, one of the coolest horses to watch, Buck. Black Tie in at 2nd, and Tokyo Bubbles of the Stampede. In at 3rd, Bull of the Year, Big Bank. Never seen this one. Universal Pro Rodeos. Pegasus of Pete Carr and Ricky Vaughn of Powder River. So congratulations. Another thing, they released the list of livestock selected for the NFR, and that's a whole nother podcast about this stuff. But interestingly enough, I just kind of glanced through it. So don't completely hold me to these numbers, but I think they're factual. It looks like Pickett Pro Rodeo has the most bareback horses coming with 11. Calgary Stampede, 17 saddle broncs to the NFR. Wow, that's a lot of horses. Pete Carr with 7 head of bulls. The bulls that 7 head look like the most of any one contractor. So I thought that was interesting. The NFR photographers, there's always some drama in this, but Clint Thompson, Haley Ray, Rosanna Sales, and Alexis Caddy. Looks like they got that. Congratulations. It looks like they always pick specialty acts for the 3rd and the 4th. They do specialty acts in the NFR. Kelly Clark, Bella DaCosta, and the Griffith Gang, Austin Singletary. Some of these people, honestly, I haven't seen, which isn't good if you're a producer. Second performance, Liberty Cunningham, David Whitmore, which I think is Dangerous Dave. I think he's a clown. Courtney Claybaugh, Kate, and Tara Flitton, I think out of the Utah crew. And don't forget that the top 15 breakaway ropers, they'll compete for $300,000. That's an increase of $50,000 at the South Point. 2 days, 10 rounds. So just just some notable mentions as we start to hear who gets to go to the NFR. Also, really a kickback. You talked about Piper Ewell. Ask if I know her and know Piper and her family really, really well. I'm glad you brought that up. Piper Ewell, we've been executive producing. We've done a broadcast show, Kelsey, your mom, on Piper, that's going to be 8 30-minute episodes. That's going to air on the Cowboy Channel. It's called Piper Ewell, a Cowgirl Original. It starts on October 15th at 7:30 primetime, 30-minute shows. This is something different. This is a different kind of a broadcast than you're used to on the Cowboy Channel. So you can get to know this young lady, and man, she is unbelievably talented. She's fiery. I mean, I've seen her, been around her. She's a handful. So it's a good product on Cowboy Channel, something different. Piper Ewell, a Cowgirl Original TV series. It airs the 15th of October. We've had some parts of that broadcast with their edit team and stuff up there. It's a good show. It'll be a cool watch if you have time.
I can hardly wait to know her. And I know a couple years ago when I was at Pendleton and I went over to Happy Canyon to the show, to the night show, she was in that. And I mean, she's just a kid. And I saw a picture the other day of her jumping a horse over a car. Like and at Cheyenne this year, she gives other people Roman riding a head start and has a flat ass horse race, Roman riding. I mean, she's fearless. And I do have a question since you were just talking about bucking stock. There would be two things on that, I guess. One, I noticed at the Canadian finals, there's a stock contracting company that's like a hyphenated company that includes the name Ewell. Is that her family?
I would bet it is. I don't know the answer to that, but they just bought a feedlot. They've got a lot of ground up there. They've got a big agricultural operation. And you got to be careful what you mentioned to Piper, because I think somewhere in conversation a year and a half ago or 2 years ago in Denver, we were talking about great specialty acts that I've seen in my lifetime. And I said, well, Jim and Jan Warvell jumped Roman horses over a car. So if you really want to be good, and sure enough, her mom sends me a text and they've got a car in the middle of the arena, and Pipes has decided now, if that's what you've seen, then I can do it. And she's, and here's the deal. She loves performing, but what's cool, and you'll see in this docuseries, is she's really a remarkable horse trainer. At that young of an age, she's very, very far along in her ability to train horses and mentor at such a young age. And she's got an older brother, and it kind of, the family dynamic, right? They're a real working family. Like, forcing them to come in to do an interview is like pulling their toes off because they've still got 300 head of cattle to feed. So it's an interesting show. You can see her throw some fits. Like, it's the real deal, right? There's a lot, we'll hear a lot more about Piper Ewell, but I bet you their family, they're very entwined in the Stampede and the all of the legacy groups up there. So I would bet maybe they do. I don't know that for sure.
Well, and to be clear on what I saw was her jumping that car. She was bareback. She wasn't Roman riding. So she might do that too, but it isn't what I saw. And on a completely random note, if anybody out there has never Googled Wenda Johnson running full-fledged barrel pattern bareback, it's a must-see. I'm like, what? So she's in Piper's league as a horseman.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, that's cool. So that was all I had, and wanted to throw in a few things from the contract personnel side of the game and the livestock side of the game and news. Now we can get into point of view, which you brought up something that I thought was interesting as you start to reflect on No Spin Rodeo. So we'll let you kick off kind of what point of view is, because really, listeners, we're going to take feedback, which we got a lot of good feedback, and we're going to make it the crux of point of view in this episode. But I think Kendra, she's a headline writer, so we'll let her kind of title point of view, and then we'll kick it over to Greg and we'll run through some of this feedback and tell you what we know that you might not know. So what is it?
Well,
what is it?
I just tell me something I don't already know. Is just like what I would call as a writer, I would call it, that's my working headline. That's like my basic working premise, of what this is going to be about. And to me, the rest of the rodeo story, telling people things that they don't already know, is something that's like become our calling card. And this show is known for it. And I take great pride in it because I think it's cool to not just be, the news of ABC, here's who won, but some extra things that people just might not already know. So that, because, the more it's like a sport. If you're competing in a sport, the better you get at it, the more you love it, right? The more you're just hooked. Well, it's the same with being a fan or having any part of it. I don't care if you're a contestant, a committee, a stock contractor, a sponsor, whatever it is. The more you know, it's like, these are our people. This is our sport, and it just rises all tides within in our sport. So I think it's very cool, and I think we're getting so much feedback, and I think that's also something that we should be really proud of, that people feel comfortable, to come to us and ask if they want to know something, because we do have access that most people don't. So we appreciate that too.
Well, our goal is to be news. There's a lot of podcasts that are entertainment. Our goal, as we set off early, is to be news and fact, no political BS involved. I think we've accomplished that. Check, check, check. But commentary is the one thing that I think you're saying that now when people ask me about the podcast, I said it's news and commentary. And I think the commentary is the little gold nuggets that a lot of our listeners like. We take for granted that we know that we are able to color outside the lines and know the backstories of things. And we try to make sure everybody understands what we know about the backstory or we find is interesting. So we're going to keep getting better.
It's really, it's super cool. And this morning I had an example that's relevant where I called an absolute iconic cowboy and to ask him something. And he said, I just yesterday turned down, a newspaper calling me for comment on this same thing. And I turned it down. But because we go so far back, I'm just going to go ahead because I trust that you will not spin what I say or turn it around or twist it. And that makes me feel so happy, like that people trust us to tell us and trust that we will deliver it correctly. So
we'll do our best and we'll correct it if we're wrong. It's
Sure.
okay to say when you're wrong. So
you bet.
All right, well, let's get started. Greg, so tell us what we don't already know. We're going to go through feedback. Greg, if you'll read it, then we'll take a shot at answering these for everybody.
Well, this one kind of caught me off guard. It's from 502. What happened to Jacob Elder?
Okay, so it's Edler.
That's you, Ken.
Edler,
that's
sorry.
You.
Yeah, you bet. It's okay. And I called him. And he, for those who don't know who Jacob Edler is, he's made one NFR in the steer wrestling. That was in 2020 when it was in Texas. He won the average, he won the world, and upset the entire. No one saw it coming, whatever, but he won the world, and he hasn't made it back since. And so that person, I'm assuming, is kind of be like, well, now wait a minute, this guy, 4 years ago he was the world champ. So. He did last year at Tucson tear up a knee really badly and had to have major surgery. So he was out for that. He's back. He ended up 18th in the world this year, which is, not a terrible year. He won right at 80 grand. And he told me that he had some horse issues halfway through the year and kind of played musical horse, as he put it, to the finish line. But he has a young one that's coming on that he's pretty excited about for this, 2025 season. He also has a little brother coming on in the bulldogging, Emmett Edler, and it kind of sounds like they'll be, probably in the truck together. Jacob Edler is kind of a wild card, and we learned that about him in 2020 when he would be put on when he won the world, and everybody was like, it wasn't quite Jaco Roper-esque, but it was, here's how he put it to me. It feels like we have the tools to be successful this next year. I'm going to keep fighting and scrapping and getting all my pickles in a row until I get back to where I want to be. So Jacob Edler is healthy. He has a young horse coming on, and he's ready to do battle in 2025. So he's still with us, and he's still doing pretty darn good. So that's good news.
Good deal. Steve had a question about judges. Should rodeo committees have a say on who judges their rodeos? How about stock contractors? Should they have a say in who does or does not come to their rodeos? Everyone who's ever judged a rodeo wants to do the very best they can. I do agree with you that there are a lot of really good judges and a lot of judges that need more experience. I think one of the reasons there are not more really good judges is the pay. It's not worth it for a lot of guys to go judge rodeos when they may only break even doing it. Rodeo committees do not have to supply rooms for the judges. And depending on where the rodeo is, one night in a motel may cost up to half of what the judge will make for the performance. In my opinion, every single professional rodeo should be required to supply room for their judges. Look at college rodeo. Every single college university who hosts a rodeo is required to provide rooms for their judges. If a college rodeo can do it, there's absolutely no reason why professional rodeos can't.
Okay, well, I'll take a swing at this one. You got to put things in perspective a little bit, I think. Before you start comparing professional rodeo judges' careers with college rodeo judging careers, we don't have the exact pay and everything. For instance, Utah Days of 47 Rodeo, we provide rooms for our judges. I think some rodeos do that. It's at their discretion. I don't know the exact pay for rodeo judges, but I would venture to say it's probably under $300 a performance, if I'm guessing. I probably could look that up and find out. But the problem is everything's gotten so much more expensive. And specifically, do you think that the rodeo committee should have a say in the judges that come? There's probably an angle that I could say, yeah, maybe. Should stock contractors? No. You're opening up a whole can of worms there, in my opinion. I think that as rodeo progresses and more money gets into the competition of it, like in bull riding now, you're going to have to get to the point where you put some real time and thought into the people that are deciding who gets that money. It's going to have to get better. The judging systems are going to have to get better. The technology is going to have to get better. We've talked about that. These judges should be put in rooms and, frankly, probably sequestered. I mean, if you really wanted to get down to it, they probably shouldn't be able to sit around and have a conversation with the guys that they're going to use a pencil on later, I think. I think that pro officials in pro sports have a job to do, and that's to enforce the rules that the leagues have put into place, make the best call at the time. And so I'm not going to reopen the can of worms about, good judges versus bad judges and young judges and old judges and all that junk. So to answer the question, no, I don't. I think they should get rooms. I think they should get compensated. But I think that needs to be segmented with the amount of prize money being delivered at the rodeo. Again, the word in this business that you're not allowed to say is tiering, but still, there should be some real thought put into who's judging Houston and who they're commingling with and all of that at a rodeo that size compared to a $500 added rodeo, which I think should matter and should be good judges. I'm just saying that if you're going to have to start focusing on this, you better focus on the top tier events that have huge implications. And you better make sure you don't give anybody the opportunity to either be accused of screwing with the judging system, stock contractors, right? Any of that? No, that they should come, they should do their job, they should be great at it. And in my opinion, they even shouldn't be commingling with the people that they're deciding their fate on. So that's what I've got on judges.
Okay. The next one's from Oklahoma. It's a correction. So someone says there's a little correction from this episode, which was the last one we did. The video of Wacy Shala trick riding was with his sister, Madison Shayla, not Madison McDonald. I'm very proud to say I know the Shaylas very well. We're all from Weatherford, Oklahoma area. Wacy was in my 4th grade class, and his sister, Madison, is a very talented trick rider and overall great human being. She gives great trick riding lessons to aspiring trick rider girls. Hopefully, she will be at the NFR someday. Needless to say, we are so proud of Wacy and Madison. They are hard workers and great kids.
I got this one. I am the one who misspoke, and I made a bad assumption. When I saw Madison and trick riding, I jumped straight to Madison McDonald. So my bad on that. And I will say, very gracious correction. Thank you. Because the full comment started out with, first of all, I love the podcast. And it ended about that the Shalas are great kids, which is so awesome because I don't yet know, a lot of us don't yet know Wacy Shala, who's a bareback riding, bull riding phenom and is in the top 5 of the world all around race this year. But he's 18 years old and we're looking forward to knowing him. And it's wonderful to know that he's a great kid and in addition to being a great young cowboy. So that's very, very cool. So perfect. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Our next one's from 713. It's an etiquette comment. So I'm watching the Governor's Cup national anthem. Not sure where else to put this out at. Please advise women they do not take their hats off during the national anthem unless they're in uniform. Thanks. Stepping off the soapbox now. Keep up the good work with the podcast.
Now, let me have this. I love feedback that's not about standings and lineage and stuff that bores me to death. This one's interesting. I think this is cool. So I think this is cool. So I had to do a little research. So the national anthem, this all started way back when someone deemed an etiquette that the beautiful women with their fancy hats on did not have to try to remove them for the national anthem. The men's hats were typically ugly and could just be removed, so they should be done so. However, good no spinning sir, it is not true that women do not have to take their hats off unless they're in uniform. What I have found, zero proof that this is real. But what my research has found is this, that a woman may leave her hat on during the playing of a national anthem when they're indoors, unless it's considered a unisex hat. Now, I know, everybody's unisex. I know. Okay, a unisex hat, which is like a baseball cap or something like that. When wearing a unisex hat, a woman should follow the same guidelines as men. So here's what I'm going to boil it down to. It's the same thing with the prayer. If you want to take your damn hat off, take it off and show respect to the flag. And if you're a woman that can get it off your mop and not screw your mop up, I mean, because I know there's a lot of bobby pins and different glues and stuff that goes into a cowboy hat on your do. But if you can take it off and you want to show respect, come on, no spinner, 713. Let them show respect to the flag. It's about time we saw more respect for the U.S. flag than not. So kudos to any woman that takes her hat off during the national anthem. I respect that.
Well, I thought also that it was, I thought it was pretty cool actually to see women at the CFR on their victory laps. There were some women who took their hats off and were like, like a lot of guys do, and pumping that hat in the air. It was just, it had nothing to do with any sort of etiquette, but it was just, they were just so excited. And I thought that was really cool. And I think it's interesting that you say that the history is like men's hats were plain and the women's hats, were so, back in the day, were so frilly. And then my mind was sitting there going, well, maybe that was to offset like peacocks, that the men got the pretty feathers and the women got the plain feathers. And it's like somewhere there's some weird history here. But hey, on the unisex hat point that you made, ball caps and cowboy hats would, I would say, be considered unisex, because there's no difference really unless the hat is freaking pink. It's probably a
Well,
unisex hat. A black felt hat is a black felt hat on a girl or a guy, right?
That's true.
yeah, but
So
I think God kind of shakes the dice. It's kind of like Yahtzee for God, because when He throws it out for you, when it's doing the genetic jumbo, everybody gets a little bit of good and bad. The poor male peacock, he looks good, but he's dumb as a log, right? He ain't, the chick peacock, she's way smarter than him. He might have got the pretty feathers, but he's the one that gets stuck in the corner and she's got to lead him out. Okay, here we go.
We were in Pendleton about the discussion we had about the grass. They said, great podcast. The only thing we'd like to mention is that, yes, the grass makes things difficult for some, but especially this year because it rained a lot on Wednesday before and during the perf. It's usually not that big of an issue when it's hot and dry out. Letter Buck.
okay, so for one thing, we all love Pendleton, 10-time rodeo of the year. It's extraordinary. But the fact is, the grass is a factor every year, and morning slack, I don't care if it rained or not, when it's dewy, especially in the beginning, that first slack day before that grass gets kind of dried out and shoot up. And throughout the whole thing, there are horses, there are, some slips and slides every single year since it started. That's not saying it's a bad thing, but it is a factor. It's just a fact of life when you're talking about having a rodeo on a high school football field. We love Pendleton, but there are ice nails in this world for a reason.
Yeah, and there's no the high school. I think it's cool. Like if you watch a NASCAR race and they go round and round and round on an even track, but then you watch an IndyCar race, street race, where they're making corners and stuff and going over manholes, I think it just adds a whole nother layer to competition, right? That there's no doubt every competitor that's there makes some type of adjustment for the grass. That's no slight to Pendleton. That's actually makes it more interesting. But you can't say that it's not a factor, wet or not. It's a factor, but that's cool. It's cool. It's a factor. It's one of the coolest rodeos ever because it's unique. I was just talking at the Governor's Cup. We had a little deal, got my Governor's Cup hat on. Thanks, Rory and Jessica and all the people at Cinch at Governor's Cup. That was a great event. That building looked beautiful. That's a cool event. Cinch does a great job there. But we were talking about that, and that's what I was telling when we were at our marketing conference. I was telling the committees, find out what makes you unique and capitalize on that as a rodeo. Pendleton is a great example of that, right? What is it that makes you unique? Like we were talking about Deadwood. Deadwood, the name alone, right? I can't think of a cooler name than we're having a rodeo in Deadwood. That's just cool. Capitalize on that. Committees out there, figure out what makes you unique and go out there and make something of it. So congratulations, Pendleton.
Well, I did find the East Coast equivalent of Pendleton. The Bonifay Rodeo is held on a high school football field.
Is it? Is it on grass?
On grass.
Okay,
really?
I'll say this.
It's the only other one that's on grass.
Okay, but I had some cowboys tell me that where it's different, at least this is what the cowboys told me, is that there's been another rodeo somewhere too on grass. But they said what made it less slippery was that some of these other committees with rodeos on grass brought like sand in, and they said it made it less slippery. Whereas back to the rest of the story on the grass, at Pendleton, you will not see somebody in the timed events with horseshoes. It's either barefoot or with horseshoes tacked on with ice nails, which are like cleats. So, but they said at some of those other rodeos, the traction was really different and it was less slippery because they brought in sand. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. We didn't see many slips.
Well, that's a sand base there, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
it is
sand.
very sandy there in Florida.
Well, and just so you know, on these turf fields, all these NFL games, they bring in sand or a sand equivalent to put in the turf to give traction. So all of that makes sense, Kendra. It absolutely makes sense.
Okay, our next one's about transparency. In the September 27th Pro Rodeo Sport News Business Journal, it shows the required circuit count for the 2025, but it does not include required maximum official rodeo count for 2025 in each event. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2025 rodeo season starts October 1st. Shouldn't each event count be publicized, posted knowledge before the next rodeo season starts, so everyone knows the rules of the games before the year-long game starts? Makes me laugh when the breakaway ropers had drama the first year there was a breakaway national finals because most girls said only a select few knew there would be a finals in January, and everyone else was told about the first breakaway finals in July or August. These organizations serves all members, not just a select few. This stuff is amateur and embarrassing.
I'll say on that breakaway deal that
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Well, but I think it's great. And the breakaway deal, that was my absolute understanding the first year there was a finals, where there were girl after girl after girl would say to me that, you know, some of us are out here on a leap of faith because we really don't have any idea. There was no official announcement till very late in the game as to whether or not they would have a finals in Las Vegas. And so, I mean, to me, this is very fair. This is based on stuff that did actually happen that a lot of people probably don't know about, but that did actually happen. As far as this other part of the rodeo counts,
Well, the rodeo count's wrong. He's wrong on that. The rodeo count. So the problem here, typically, a lot of the problems that we talk about on this podcast with the leagues and the associations is more about communication. I agree that they don't do a very good job making information easily accessible and communicating, which we'll have a bunch of that as we go through this point of view. However, you can pull out your 2025 PRCA rule book. Go ahead, get it out. Get it out. You got it out. Everybody's got it out. Okay. Now flip over to page 141. 141. Rule R1.7.2. Maximum number of official entries. It's listed right there in the rule book. Bareback riding, 100 official rodeos. Saddle bronc, 100. Bull riding, 125. Extreme bull stuff. Tie down roping, 80. Steer wrestling, 80. Team roping, 80. So this stuff was documented. It
What's
was in
the breakaway?
The rule book. I don't know because I don't have the WPRA book open. I should have had that. Thanks, Greg.
I will say this before you call people stupid for asking this question. The counts.
I didn't call anybody stupid. I was deflecting arrows.
Okay.
I didn't call stupid.
I'm not casting any arrows, but I will say that the official numbers of rodeo count for each event has changed in the last few years from year to year. And it's the contestants in each event who vote on each event's rodeo count, right?
This is correct. And they didn't do a good job in the years past. There was one, what was it that changed? Was it team roping that changed like last year? And people didn't hear. But I'm just saying this because I double checked. This was documented. And I think from the league or the offices, PRCA's offices, if it didn't change and it's in the rule book, we don't need to worry about it. And again, communicating these things, you know, putting it on the website with, in case you didn't know, here's the official rodeo count, that probably wouldn't be very hard, Mr. PRCA webmaster. and then they would see this and it would diffuse some of this. But the fact is, credit where credit's due. I'm not calling anybody that's a no spinner stupid. They're all brilliant. I mean, chess champions. But it is documented.
Okay. Another little tidbit that I think is interesting on our tell me something you don't already know. In case people don't already know this, for the let's just take Stetson Wright as an example on this. For the all around, you can count 70 rodeos. So if you're Stetson Wright and you can count 100 in the saddle bronc riding, 125 in the bull riding, and 70 in the all around, he has to when he enters a rodeo, he has to say official or non-official for these three different things, right? I mean, that's pretty interesting.
That is very
gamesmanship.
That's the woes of being fantastic in three separate disciplines. I mean, you're not going to find very many people that have that problem, Kendra.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting. Like, he has to get out his book and decide if a rodeo counts for this, or counts for that. Anyway.
Strategy. Okay. That is interesting. What's next?
The last thing here is the PRCA would never schedule another rodeo on top of the NFR. How in the world is it fair to schedule rodeos that important to all the steer ropers and contestants working it as a second event, for that matter, for the 2025 regular season straight on top of the 2024 National Final Steer Roping this year? The NFSR is November 1st and 2nd, and yet the rodeo in Lubbock, Texas includes steer roping with 10,000 added. Everyone who ropes steers needs and wants to be there. Then there's a rodeo in Texas City, Texas, with the dates of November 1st and 2nd on top of the NFSR. It does not include steer roping, but penalizes guys trying to work steer roping as a second event when it conflicts with a national event. National finals should be sacred events without any conflict, period.
I'm going to agree with that one. And simply because, there would never be another rodeo anywhere, anytime during the NFR. It's a national finals. So, well, to me, if you're in the top 15, and Tommy Joe, I know you're waiting to pounce like a cat, which is great.
Like a gorilla.
But like a gorilla with the red ass. But the thing,
that would be a baboon. That would be a baboon.
A baboon. Okay, sorry. But I mean, this is fundamentally, to me, this is kind of falls under like a no-brainer, because why would the guys who worked so hard to make this year's NFSR not get to go to a 10,000 added steer roping, because it's exactly on their dates? So I
have a question, though. I have a question on that, because the national final steer roping was 2 weeks later last year. So my question is, were these other events already that first weekend in November in previous years?
Let me know when the baboon gets to show his red ass.
You go show that good ass.
Okay. For one, anybody out there that has, I've done this, that has booked sports venues for events, you don't just call them up and go, hey, we want to have the National Steer Roping Finals in your venue and we need it on this date. Because, newsflash, most of them are doing hockey. Some of them are doing indoor football. They have circuses. They have events. Their job is to keep it full. So getting dates in these venues, by the way, that's hard. And so the origin of this date change, Greg, has to do with the available dates at Mulvane for that venue, which forced it to change to a weekend to where they remember it's not like we just come in there and do a convention where in 3 hours they can set up a couple stages and some pipe and drape. You got to bring in 3 million pounds of dirt. You got to bring in chutes. You got to bring in contract personnel. So these events are big for indoor facilities. This isn't out on the football field. And so finding a date's hard. And so that's why the dates moved, right? That's why it moved. Now, I understand that the I believe it's called the Lubbock event was approved and in before they realized they had to do a date change. The PRCA has fixed that, by the way, and it's in the deal. The PRCA administration, we questioned them on it. They're on Monday, October 28th at 11 a.m. They're going to do all of the steer roping, okay, for that event on Monday the 28th. So those guys can do both. Now, on November 1st and 2nd, there is the Wilderness Circuit Finals, the Turquoise Circuit Finals, Brookings, South Dakota, the Adirondack Stampede, Casper, Wyoming, the Largo Mar Roundup, that's the one in Texas City. I don't know how you're going to, I don't know that I endorse wiping off any other rodeos during the steer roping finals because it may negatively affect a person's all-around chances. I mean, the nature of our game is committees put on rodeos in their markets. They add money so that the contestants can win them. The contestants decide if they want to come. The committees need to decide when they have their rodeos. Should the PRCA not allow any rodeos during the steer roping? I just named 2 circuit finals during that weekend. You know, that's a big ask in a relatively crowded fall season. So, no, I think Coleman. I mean, this creates some conflict for all around guys, and some decisions that have to be made depending on where your goals are. But Kendra, so you're advocating, you think that there shouldn't be anything else happening on November 1st and 2nd. Is that correct?
Well, I'll say this, and I wasn't even aware that there were a couple of circuit finals. That's rough if you're trying to make it. Say you said turquoise circuit, so that could easily happen to somebody if they're trying to make it to the NFSR, and then maybe they're a team roper or a tie down roper. I do agree with this point about Texas City, and I'll say why, unless somebody changes my mind. I agree that Texas City, Texas shouldn't be on top of the NFSR, because if you take, I've never really fallen into you and I know well of all the conspiracy theories over the years. When we worked for the PBR, there were theories that the PBR didn't want a Brazilian to win there were certain years, or didn't want a certain person to win for certain years, and they wanted this guy was their guy. And then there have been conspiracy theories about, okay, the PRCA want a rough stock all around champ, whatever. I'm not going into all that crap. It's like, may the best man win. But let's just look at this year's World All Around race, and 4 of the top 5 are timed event guys. And Shad Mayfield's leader of the pack. Steer roping's his second event. Coleman Proctor almost made the steer roping, in steer roping's his second event. Whatever. I just feel like Texas City, Texas is too good of a rodeo for Shad Mayfield or Coleman Proctor to skip out on. But that doesn't feel right. That they can't go to a rodeo that they should be officialing for their main event that is their livelihood. If you can make it, I mean, I just don't see that they should have to decide. If Coleman Proctor He almost made the steer roping finals. He shouldn't have to turn out his partner Logan Medlin at Texas City, Texas. If it's a good enough rodeo to enter to count toward world standings in 2025, I don't think that he should have to decide between a national finals and an event that is one that he would absolutely have on his official count for the season, for the next season. So you're talking about two different seasons being impacted. But why put him behind the eight ball going into a new year when you don't have to? You can always have the steer roping a different push to a different day, right? So it doesn't conflict for the other events.
What's bothering me a little bit here is I'm not finding, and I did earlier, this on the deal, this event. I'm trying to figure out. I think it was $76,000 added at that Texas City rodeo, at that rodeo, and I don't know. I'm getting a little nervous now because I read off those rodeos because I looked on the schedule, but I'm not finding the Largo Mar Roundup for some reason now. I don't know, but anyway, here's the deal. So I would ask you this, Kendra, if this committee says, you don't know the situation in that market, and they said, look, this is when we have to have our rodeo for whatever reason, and we're doing $76,000, and you're sitting in your big comfy chair as the boss of when rodeos get to happen and when they don't. So you're telling me you think it's better to say, we're not gonna throw that 76,000 in for somebody to win because we don't want to compromise these guys that are making the steer open finals. You would opt to not have someone win that if it's 76,000. I think that's what I read. I can't find it right now for some reason. That would be your decision if they said, look, this is when we have to have the rodeo.
I'm not saying to cancel the rodeo. You know what? If everyone has taken every possible look at this, and if you're going to tell me that every avenue has been exhausted,
well, I don't know that.
We'll talk. But I just don't.
I think that I would assume that administration pays attention. That's an assumption. Zero proof on that. Pays attention to conflicts. But let me tell you, it's a whole lot easier to sit there and say what should have been done than sometimes to do it, Kendra, because there's a lot of things that go into these decisions, and there's a lot of small details that we don't all know about when we're sitting there saying what should or should. And I'm not necessarily defending this decision because it may be that this event could have been pushed 2 weeks without any problem, and that was never asked. I don't know the answer to that, right? But I'm just saying, you asked me, do I think we should clear off the slate for the steer open finals and turn down 7 rodeos? No, I don't think we should do that.
I think this is not something that is particular to this year. This has happened in years past. And by the way, there are reasons such as these that, like, I thought it was really fun to watch Tough Cooper. Remember when Tough Cooper won the world all-around title and proposed to his wife on the stage and all that? That was because of steer roping. Tough Cooper no longer steer ropes. I was there when he ran his first ones at Trevor Brazil's house. Like, he was really good at it and fun to watch and great for the event. But he's not doing it now. Why? Because the headaches aren't worth it. And I just think it's too bad. If we would just try every possible thing we can do to make it fair for all members, which is what every single thing we've talked about comes back down to, that'd be very much appreciated.
It would.
Nobody wants a them against us thing.
I agree, but you've got how many members in the PRC? Do you know that number?
I don't know the current number for sure. I know what they used to say, but
what they used to say. So
what was it? 6,000, 5,000?
Yeah, I thought I saw somewhere around 8,000. You got 8,000 members, all that have a say. Oh, and then we need to divide them up into 9 different sports disciplines, all of which have a different set of needs. And I don't want to be the king of that kingdom and try to keep all my peeps happy. It's impossible. You got to make the best decision for the group as a whole. And sometimes that's not even done. There's times when we make decisions for the whole because of the way it affects one piece. That's not right either. So I just don't think it's quite as simple as, I agree with you. Everything should be taken into consideration, but I guarantee you those decisions aren't quite as simple as some of us think.
I agree with you on that.
Okay, well, that was we're into this. We'll kind of wrap up here.
I have a couple of things to add onto the tail end of that, that are directly point of view related, because they tell me something I don't already know. We touched on Houston, I don't know, a time or two ago, and that they're going to add a whole bunch of more money in 2025, which is awesome. And, they're billing themselves officially as the world's richest regular season rodeo, which I believe they have been for quite some time, right? The new
I think
official
they added
total
65,000.
Well, the
each.
new official total purse is going to be $2,533,500, which is extraordinary. And now, something I don't think we got into specifically is we were talking about, top loading versus, having it, pay more as it goes down. And the new, for a long time, the winner at Houston was paid $50,000. Well, now in 2025, the winner is going to get $65,000 instead of $50,000. Yes. Second place is going to win $30,000 instead of $20,000. Third is going to win $20,000 instead of $10,000, and fourth is going to win $10,000 instead of $5,500. Any of those places are more than most rodeos. We are told that it all is going to count toward the world standings, right?
It is. Well, all of
Okay.
it, and it should be.
And by the way, if you're the committee, obviously you want every penny to count. That's obvious. So I thought it would be interesting because I remember, 15 years ago or something like that, having these big, lengthy conversations in person with people like Fred Whitfield and Cody Ohl over. They were kind of hot at the time about the 50 counting, because they were like, man, it's so out of proportion, and world championships shouldn't be decided by one rodeo and stuff. And we would go round and round. And part of my thinking was, that I would always say, we have to start somewhere with one that, like this. And then, but I feel like then, it kind of spurred some competitive juices with San Antonio and different things where they wanted to, pay more. And so that was a good thing. And I'm like, what? Instead of making this one not count, we need more of them. Kind of like what Fred is saying here. We need more of them. Anyway, so yeah. I thought it would be super interesting now that his career's in the rearview mirror to ask him, okay, 65,000. What do you think? And his exact words: they need to have more rodeos match it, so they don't just give away one NFR spot, which is virtually the same thing that he said when he was contending for a world title. It's really, this is tricky stuff because
okay, but
who doesn't want more money? Everybody wants more money.
Okay, but you've heard me say this before, that if you want that one free NFR spot, just go win Houston. That's part of sport. And by the way, and I don't have the exact numbers, but all of the numbers are going up. It's not as skewed. It's all relative. By the way, I hear that there'll be 60 of the tour rodeos, the Cinch Tour, the Pro Rodeo Tour rodeos. The lowest one of 60 adding $127,000. Did you hear that? That's 60 rodeos, Kendra. So, yes, Houston should get to make whatever rules and do it whatever they want when they're paying that much money. I don't even care if they get to play by different rules than everybody else, because that's huge for everybody that gets to take part in that. But the entire lagoon, we're not a swamp, that's up north in DC, but our lagoon is raising. And if you've got 60 tour rodeos, and I think I'm right, I'll fact check myself later, but where 125,000's the bottom, there's a chance to win a lot of money now. And you're not gonna, it all should count. Every penny should count. The restricting what credit you get for winning that because all of those that didn't win it don't like it. Come on. Mm-mm.
I think that leads also to when we're talking about like the rules set out at the start of the season, which started this week, the new 2025 season. Um, is it at this time publicly to all members clear how next year's tour works? Because I don't. If it is, I don't know.
No, it's not because I don't know that the final tour layout has been voted on.
Because
Which
right
again,
now is when people
I,
are
I,
building a playbook of their whole
I,
year. How do they decide?
I don't have a defense for that. That stuff should be buttoned up in advance. But I guess the only defense to that is the way things fall. You got to get through the 2024 tour before you start analyzing the changes, maybe, right? To implement. I guess I can see that. They're doing audits and everything else. They're pretty busy over there in Colorado Springs, making sure they've got the right people to the NFR, and they should prioritize that. So again, I'm not making excuses. I think everybody can do better. I do agree that when you start a season, the rules should be in place. I agree with you. The tour, right? What the tour is and how it works and how it impacts and all of that stuff should be in place. I think it will be in place in enough time that it's not going to change anybody's business decision or impact them negatively. I don't think. We'll see. I don't think that would be the case. And so kind of it is what it is. But I agree with you. I would like to see all this stuff buttoned down, but here's the nice thing. This lagoon is growing. There's more money in Western lifestyle now than there's ever been, which is creating change and new territory to figure out. And we're going to continue to make some mistakes and figure out how to live. But by the way, people can pay their ranch bills now. Like there's real money that can be won. And like we've always said, maybe world champions won't be selling used cars when they're 45.
Right.
And that's a good
Right.
thing.
And that's fantastic. And it's like, but we talked about an episode or two ago about like people not knowing which certain rodeos, if you won those smaller rodeos, were buys to, for example, Mandan, which was 2 weeks before the end
Yep.
of the regular season.
Yep.
That's fair
Yep.
for people to know
Yep.
now, because if
Yep.
they need to save a
Absolutely.
rodeo, then
Yep.
they need to know now.
Well,
Don't
they
go to
don't.
one this week.
They've got 80 rodeos. I mean, you're right. They should know now, but they've got 80 rodeos to save. I mean, I agree with you in principle that it should be done, but it's not devastating if you found out shortly after the NFR, right? I mean, you've got a handful of big rodeos in the first quarter. You're really mapping that. Truth is, you're probably really mapping that stuff out back into there, into 2025, right? Am I wrong? I mean, there may be some Poindexters out there with hats that are really trying to figure this out right now, but a lot of these guys aren't at this point. You got 80 rodeos to play with.
Yeah,
I mean, in principle, you're 100% right. I'm just saying the actual impact. Is this an unfair situation for them in the present moment?
Oh, I don't
Nah.
think anybody's intentionally trying to hurt anybody with it, but it's kind of like what we were talking about the breakaway ropers before. If some people know about it now, they would know. I mean, I just had a fascinating conversation with first-time NFR qualifier Kyle Dennison, who just made in the team roping. The gamesmanship and the things that happened right there at the very end were insane. Of him, he had no clue that he was going to make it to the Governor's Cup or whatever we're calling the Cinch playoffs in Sioux Falls. he had to doctor's release Albuquerque to get a rodeo back for it to count. I mean, it's so crazy how tiny it gets. And we're not disagreeing with each other here. All we're doing is saying if everyone can know the rules of the game as soon as possible, very publicly, not just a few people, and whether or not, you know, if in a, event director happens to tell you because you get up at Slack the same and he mentions it. No, like every member knowing ABC, here's everything we know as of today. And on an ongoing basis, as things evolve and change, if it could be very, very public to all the members, that should just be so appreciated. And it would just prevent a lot of
Well, to go
you
back
know
to what I said earlier, they do a very, very, very poor job of communicating. Right? The communication process from a global perspective to the sport is not good. We have to work to find the answers, and usually it's because of the people in our phones that we're able to call to find the answers. And it needs to be more accessible, because some people are male peacocks and they get caught in the corner and they need to be able to read it really easy. So, I'm with you. I think we agree on all of it. It needs
I
to be
think so
better.
too. Um,
It needs to be
and
better.
I'm gonna save some stuff that Fred and I had an awesome conversation about Shad Mayfield, but in the interest of time, I'm gonna save it for another episode as we get closer to the NFR because it's actually pretty cool. Let's go to the other end of the arena before we leave. The bull riding. There are some things that I certainly didn't know before talking to some different guys just here in the last day. We mentioned last time that Josh Frost was scheduling surgery for his shoulder right after the NFR. Big change on that. He just 10 days ago went to Mexico for stem cell therapy, and they now think that the tendon is like going to reattach itself. And he said that he had the treatments 10 days ago and already feels 10 times better. This is an interesting side note. Like, okay, he went to Mexico, which, by the way, the likes of Casey Field and Trevor Brazile used to go to Mexico to get treatments they couldn't get here. Agree or don't agree, I don't really care. This is their bodies. But anyway, Richmond champion, the bareback rider, his wife, Paige, was an Olympic figure skater. So here Josh Frost has gone from fearing that he had to have major surgery that was going to keep him out for 6 months to going to Mexico for stem cell treatment that he now thinks might keep him out of the operating room. Paige Champion hooked Josh Frost up with this Canadian physical therapist who helped her when she was ice skating at the Olympics. And she's confident that she can help stabilize Josh's shoulder with exercise. So that's like the difference between Josh Frost having a 2025 season and not. So I'm just pulling for him because that would just be incredible. But it's, there's a lot of international flair to this episode, I guess, but that would be pretty darn cool if Mexico and Canada kept an American bull rider at work. Other bull riding stuff. PBR World Champion Jess Lockwood plans to rodeo in the PRCA this year in 2025. I find that fascinating. And because he's been, PBRing for quite some time. And then that, of course, is the opposite of 7-time world champion in the PRCA, Sage Kimsey, now being over at the PBR. Fascinating. And on the Breaking Bull Riding news, what?
It's not that fascinating, but keep going.
I think it's fascinating. Like when you start finding out like the reasons and the different things that have happened. Here's the last one on the bull ring that I think it's breaking and it's interesting. Defending world champion Kai Hamilton, Australian, has been going to some PBRs, and he's riding with a helmet again, which I think's interesting because last year when he got the terrible head injury at the NFR and people were kicking and screaming and threatening JB Mooney with his life for talking him into it and da 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 da, and Kai was saying, well, I have a better chance of getting mucked out when I'm riding with the helmet. We're tall. Anyway, it was a whole big thing, as most of us remember. But I just learned something that I never knew before that I think is really fascinating. So JB Mooney and Kai Hamilton, I have the scent of JB Mooney's influence on Kai Hamilton's decision to go for the PBR, because now JB, $7 million man, is coaching over at the PBR, right? And those two remind me so much of Tough Hedeman, I can not even imagine. But I just learned this: the PBR has a rule that if you were born after 1994, helmets are mandatory. The older guys are grandfathered in to wear a hat if they so choose. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and they should be. I mean, sometimes you have to force people to do what's smart, and it's a dangerous sport. And I've sat with Donnie Gay and heard all of the old timers, specifically the old timers, and some of the rugged guys saying, your perception of where you're at and all of that. But all of that's true. Ty Murray could get off. He knew how to get off. He got off of bulls correctly and saved himself. But that's not the case with a lot of these people. And even Ty Murray and Tuff Hedeman and the greats of today, on the right bull at the wrong time, you're going to get jerked down. Okay. I don't care if you're trying to make it to 8 seconds and that bull's got a lot of drop and you happen to be a 16th of a second wrong on your positioning or your reaction time, your face is going to come, you're going to get polled. That's that part between on the head of the bull, and they should wear helmets. So I think it's a good rule. And back to your deal about fascinating. How do I say this nicely? This is my baboon coming out again. It's not so fascinating to me. And I'll give you some numbers. PBR teams, 13 weeks. 13-week season. The average team member makes $120,000 in 13 weeks.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. But it makes it real clear why, if you're riding good, you're probably going to go to PBR. If you're not riding good and you're looking to keep your name in the lights or whatever, or even a place to reset, you're probably going to go and rodeo. And if you look at baseball, they have the triple A's. It's real interesting. Really, really talented pitchers come up and pitched in the majors, and they send them down to triple A. Oh, what are you doing? They're resetting them. They're giving them a chance to succeed and strengthen their arm and fix whatever it is that's going on in their head or with their delivery. It's the same thing we're seeing happening in the bull riding, right? That, there's two leagues here, and there's no doubt, whether you like it or not, that the PBR at $15.5 million this year paid to bull riders, right? I mean, I think they've got 800 bull riders, right? Or something like that. But really, there's only about 200 in there, really, 100 that are good. You're looking at these guys making, and by the way, if the PBR rolls their tour with their teams, which is going to happen eventually, it's going to happen. Teams is, whether you like it or not, teams is where it's at in bull riding right now. It's where the money is. It's where the fans are. It is a unique concept that I believe it'll be teams for the future in the PBR. I don't think they'll have a regular season for two reasons. They can't keep putting guys on bulls forever. I mean, you used to have a break, right? You're 27 or 28 weeks and you had a break. Now you go right to teams. You're on for 13 weeks. They can't do that. The human body won't work.
Yes. And at one time, part of the thought process, going back to remembering that the PBR was founded by the world's best bull riders who came from rodeo, they took the summer break so guys could rodeo if they wanted to at their option. But you know what? That number, the fact that in a 13 summer season, the average guy's making 120,000. Hello,
Well, yeah,
hello.
and imagine when they merge those two tours, which is coming, right? When it's all just teams, which is what I predict it'll be, you're talking about the number one guy on each team making $1 million, $1 million, right? And the MVP getting, I don't know, 5 million a year. I don't know when you combine all that together what it shakes out to, but I predict that that's where it's going in the future. I think they're trying to figure it out. It's not a simple thing. I think they know they can't put these guys on this many bowls. But back to your point, and it sounds mean, and I don't mean it that way, but Sage should go to the PBR. Okay. There's a part of me that wishes Sage would have concentrated on becoming a legacy, getting that buckle. And so Sage is kind of a unique one for me,
Well,
right?
his
But
lifelong dream, was to tie Donaghy's record, as we all know. And I mean, but then again, so to me, but I respect everybody's decision. And I was just thinking to myself, okay, Paulo Crimber's kid, John, he's extraordinary. Just was the MVP of the teams, right? He's just a kid. And so for right now, it's like we will never see John Crimber in the PRCA. But I would have said that a few short years ago about JB Mooney, and then here he came, and he went and came and went to the Thomas and Mack. I understand. I understand.
Yeah,
By the same token, I will say that I get it, and more power to the people who are making decisions that are best for their families' careers. A bull rider's career obviously is not very long. And when you have a person like Josh Frost doing both, it can't be a complete shock that the chance for injury increases.
absolutely.
Of course it does. But
Absolutely.
think about somebody like that. How much money is he making, and how exciting that is? Like, these guys can actually set themselves up for life in a pretty short window. That's extraordinary, and that's what we're all after. That's what we want from more people. And so the fact that some of this stuff is even possible is so exciting. I'm just saying, I do fall short of the, when people want to say all the bull riders in the PRC suck. That's not true.
No, it's not true. But if you start to look at it, the PRC is becoming a cultivating ground. You look at this TJ Gray, there's no doubt, right? But then again, every coach in PBR teams knows exactly what all of the PRC bull riders are doing, because they're targeting them for their team's event. And by the way, if it's just financial for you, if there's no draw to be in now, I'd love to see the fact that, like, a TJ Gray that goes out in rodeos for a few seasons, right, experiences that back of the van, Pendleton, all those things, and then goes on to teams and kills it. That's get rid of the jealousy. That's exactly how it ought to be. That's fantastic. Josh, at some point, Josh is probably going to need to pick. I don't know that, but at some point, right? Physically, mentally, financially.
He said he's not 100% clear with his own self about it for 2025. He's still, he's a Frost. He's crunching some numbers and calculating risks and all that kind of stuff. But it is ultimately, to all the conversations we're having, extraordinary that we're even having this conversation about Cowboys making this kind of money.
Well, we're an hour and a half into this, so I'm going to cut this off. The baboon is going to jump off his branch. We want to thank you for joining us today for our episode of No Spin Rodeo. We're really proud. We've got great numbers. We ask you to do us a favor. Keep sending that feedback. We would love for our point of view to be able to be feedback like this a lot, because it's really cool. Thank you for sending feedback. Send us some more. Give us your thoughts, whether we agree with it or not. We'll talk about it. But this has been episode 32, No Spin Rodeo. Tell your friends about it. And by the way, we'll be letting you know where to find us at the NFR. Come watch us live and in person for No Spin Rodeo. More to come. A lot of fun times. Be safe out there. Be blessed. Have a great day. We'll see you in 2 weeks. For all of us here at No Spin, be safe.